So again, a lot of people were like, watch Smowtown, watch Smowtown. So here we go. I'm very interested in a lot of the content that he's put out. Probably not going to be doing reaction content to his like hour and 40-minute long videos. Because that would be like at least 2 hours. At least. Maybe more, depending on how much I would ramble about shit. Because I'm very good at rambling. But like I'd watch them in my spare time for sure. I just have them at least on in the background while I work. But unless people want me to upload them in parts, which just kind of sounds silly to me. I don't know. It does kind of sound a little silly to me. Doable, but silly. But yeah, I don't know a whole lot about most of the starting classes, to be totally honest. Like I started off as an astrologer. So it'll be cool when we get to the astrologer part because I can learn more about the one I actually picked. But I am intrigued. Maybe I would pick something else for another playthrough then if I find their background interesting. Especially learning about how all of the different starting classes and like races and slash or whatever, how they all play differently into the story. I think it's really cool. So let's go. Spoiler warning!
Elden Ring is set purely in the Lands Between, but it is clear that the lore of the world expands far beyond this.
Can you hear it okay?
The setting is full of many countries, many factions, groups and individuals, with a huge array of motivations. In most Souls games, our avatar comes to the world as an enigma, with very little backstory, and it is up to us to fill in the blanks.
Smoo.
But in my opinion, Elden Ring does a far better job of putting some meat on the bones.
Yeah, Elden
some
Ring
of the starting classes
does
have surprisingly deep lore associated with them. Not only is this great for interesting backstories from a role-playing perspective, but it can tell us more about the Tarnished and the world as a whole. By looking into each of these classes in depth, we can actually learn a surprising amount about the different cultures, society, countries, religion, and crime that can serve as a bedrock for our greater understanding of the lore as a whole. So today I'm going to be doing as deep a dive as possible on each of the starting classes.
Cool.
And I am certain there will be some things that you won't have considered.
Yeah.
Before we get started,
Definitely.
guys, remember if you like Elden Ring lore, please consider subscribing to the channel, as I primarily do Elden Ring lore, and usually I do Elden Ring long-form lore content.
Yeah.
But with that being said, let us jump right into the first class. So the Confessor is a very interesting class and one of my favourites, because of the implications it has for your character's backstory. Let us look at their iconic black armour set first, the chest piece of which reads the following. Worn by church confessors. The churches outside the Lands Between, dedicated to the teachings of the Two Fingers, send confessors out to follow the guidance of grace. The confessors are loyal servants to the Two Fingers, ready to hunt down and quietly dispose of their enemies.
So they're like the Secret
So obviously
Service.
the first interesting bit of lore we get from this is that the Church of the Two Fingers exists outside of the Lands Between, meaning the...
Also, does that mean that like in your story you can become disillusioned and then turn on them? This game goes so deep. I love it. Oh my god. I love it.
faith of the Greater Will, the Erd Tree and Marika persists outside, so it's just a really good bit of lore for understanding the scale of this faith and how important it is to the world at large, and it's not just isolated to the lands that we see in the Lands Between. Next up, it tells us that this origin, the Confessor origin, is a member of the Church of the Two Fingers, hence they wield the finger seal and associated finger miracles. Yet these confessors are no mere priests, but church enforcers, who hunt down enemies of the church, the Hood description even making it clear that their black outfit is designed as such to blend into the darkness. They are assassins. To me, the symbols they wear upon their cloaks makes more sense in this way. A sword intertwined with two snakes. They are the blade of the Two Fingers. Additionally, we learn from the Duelist armor set that serpents are seen as traitors to the Erd Tree, so one may interpret this symbol as the blade that hunts down traitors.
So basically, they would really hate Rykard. Awful lot of snake going on there. Hey, Dapper. Yeah, love it.
Symbolized by the snakes. You'll note that this symbol, the one on their cape, is also present on another artifact, the Creepus Vial. This is because the Order of Confessors are also known as the Assassins of the Round Table, the Creepus Vials being referred to as an artifact of the latter. These confessors don't just hunt down any blasphemers. No, these are assassins that were known to hunt down the tarnished, who strayed from grace. As a confessor, you are a tarnished hunter, hunting down other tarnished who have strayed from the path of the two fingers.
Damn.
And we can first learn of this from one of the miracles that the confessor actually starts with,
Brutal.
the Assassin's Approach, which reads as follows. Incantation of the Two Fingers Servants, who once served as the assassins of the Round Table Hold. The assassins were charged with eliminating tarnished who had strayed from grace. So we can see the confessors are an organisation of assassins directly linked to Round Table Hold itself, who would hunt down tarnished at the direction of the Two Fingers. We know these tarnished employed silence as one of their main weapons, such as through their black outfits, and incantations like Assassin's Approach and Darkness, the latter of which literally spreads a veil of darkness to confound their enemies. Thus, silence would become emblematic of these assassins, something we learn from the Creepus Vial, which reads, a ritual implement used by Round Table Hold assassins. There was a time when tarnished, who had strayed from guidance, feared nothing more than utter silence.
Makes sense.
Now, the character Creepus seems to be the head assassin, specifically named the Head Confessor, and that's something we learn from the Creepus Black Key crossbow. This title should eliminate any doubts about the Church Confessors being one and the same as the Round Table Assassins. And once again, if you look closely at this crossbow, you can see the Confessor
snakes,
symbol
yeah.
inlaid across it.
Yeah, I see it.
That is what
The
you
sword.
are if you choose this origin.
And the fingers.
And interestingly, we meet one of these confessors in game, known as Riley the Idol, one of those we are sent to hunt down as a recusant, and you can draw your own conclusions as to why, given what we've explained and the nature of the recusants.
That's cool.
Riley is wearing the Confessor set, wields the Black Key crossbow, and even drops the Creepus Vial, confirming that he was at least at one stage a Church Confessor, though his possession of the Scorpion Stinger and his proximity to the Shaded Castle might suggest another allegiance now. Ultimately, I find the Confessors to be a really interesting order, assassins in all but name, who would have cast a dark shadow over the Round Table Hold and committed some dark deeds. And that is a pretty loaded origin if you choose this class.
Amen. To make the world a better place, you gotta cover everything in blood. Blood of other people, though. Of course. Definitely.
And now let us move on to the next class, one of my favourites, Warrior. The Warriors are skilled swordsmen from a nomadic tribe
It's a cool armor
that are
set.
the inheritors of Bladecraft, developed by the legendary Blind Swordsman. We know the Blind Swordsman was an incredibly influential character in regards to combat techniques, given we learn the following from the Curved Sword Talisman, which reads as follows. It is said the Blind Swordsman was the originator of this technique, the art of allowing one's opponent to strike so as to leave them vulnerable to a well-timed reply. And so with that in mind, let us start by having a look at their armour set, which greatly implies this connection, as it reads, Cowl of a Nomadic Warrior. The blue colour of its fabric symbolises brisk waters, as fluid and flowing as the sword in the hand of its wearer. Just as still waters turn foul, stagnation leads to decay.
Yeah.
Warriors must remain ever drifting.
Fair.
The flowing technique described here is the one utilised by the famous Blind Swordsman in his fight against the Scarlet Rot,
Ugh.
and he was taught this by the Blue Dancer, as the talisman of the same name reads. The Dancer in blue represents a fairy, who in legend bestowed a flowing sword upon a blind swordsman. Blade in hand, the swordsman sealed an ancient god, a god that was rot itself.
Fun.
Now I talk about this more in my Millennial lore video, but I believe
just
the blue
thinking of her.
fairy to be Shifra River, or a manifestation of this,
Yeah.
Based on the incredible Reddit post by Nameless Singer, which I'm crediting now on the screen. Based on the incredible Reddit.
The Blue Dancer Fairy is the Shifa River. It has been well discussed thus far by the community that Melina's mentor was a blind swordsman with a flowing blade who sealed away the god of rot, who also taught her the waterfowl dance. He apparently had a mentor as well that gave him his sword, mentioned in the Blue Dancer charm. So, who was she? Let's talk about water. The blind swordsman's blade was the flowing curved sword, which was patterned after flowing water. The blind swordsman is mentioned again in the curved sword talisman, where we get a picture of a warrior wearing a blue cloth cowl, likely his depiction. The description of the blue cloth cowl says, the blue color of its fabric symbolizes brisk waters, as fluid and flowing as the sword in the hand of its wearer. Just as still waters turn foul, stagnation leads to decay. Warriors must remain ever drifting, which is like what slowed down the rot for oh my god. So many M names. So, yeah, Millennia. I kept wanting to call her Melina. I'm like, no, it's Millennia, not Melina. I don't know why. Those two, their names always get confused for me. So, oh well. Either way, thank you. 1. The key fighting rot is to keep moving like flowing waters. Still water stagnates, flowing water doesn't. 2. The blue color of the fabric symbolizes brisk waters. Blue equals flowing water. Blue Dancer Charm says the dancer in blue represents a fairy, and it was she who bestowed the flowing water sword upon the blind swordsman. The blue dancer is a fairy. Rewording this, the blind swordsman was bestowed this sword by a fairy, and this sword is patterned after flowing water. Shifra means fairy in Old Irish. The blue dancer fairy flowing Shifra River. Oh, cool. Yeah, a lot of the names I get confused from time to time. Doesn't help that I'm already like a little dyslexic too. I do my best with what I have, and it's not much.
Reddit post by Nameless Singer, which I'm crediting now on the screen, which I highly recommend you read in full detail. Long story short, Nameless Singer describes the fact that Shifra is Gaelic for fairy, and given the association with water, it 100% makes sense that the blue dancer in this talisman is actually a manifestation of Shifra River.
Cool.
So a manifestation of this water spirit taught the blind swordsman the flowing techniques of water to combat the stagnation of the scarlet rot. For those unfamiliar, flowing water and stagnant water are powerful pieces of imagery in regards to the Shinto view of the cycle of life. Flowing water is the natural, pure state of things, and stagnant water is the corruption and stalling of the natural cycle of life, and so it is fitting to have these symbolic allusions in this conflict, the flowing pureness of water and the stagnant stalling of the rot. The blind swordsman would use these flowing techniques to ward away the outer god of rot, which we learn from the scorpion stinger, with the Lake of Rot map telling us more about the sealing of this god. It reads as follows: a great lake of standing water downstream of the Ainsel River. It is said the divine essence of an outer god is sealed away in this land. So the combination of these items tells us that the blind swordsman, empowered by the blue fairy, once battled and sealed the outer god of rot,
Cool.
which no doubt led to the collapse of the great lords of rot, as described by the Mushroom Crown. And it also explains why the scarlet rot in the Lake of Rot is so virulent, because the outer god of rot itself was sealed in these lands. And credit to Igor Engel for pointing out the lore of the Lake of Rot in my last millennium.
Seems like one of the biggest items with lore on the lake was missed, the map for it. It is said that the divine essence of an outer god is sealed away in this land. So apparently the outer god of rot is located directly below / whatever the lake, which explains it being such an advanced stage of rotting. Yeah, this place was awful. This place was horrible to deal with. Oh my gosh.
Video. Thank you, Igor. So that's one hell of a legacy, and it doesn't stop there. Of course, the blind swordsman's duty would compel him to continue to track down manifestations of the Scarlet Rot, and the latest one was Malenia. Yet instead of striking down Malenia, he would become her sword master, something we learn of from the prosthesis Air Talisman, which reads, "Though born into the accursed rot, when the young girl encountered her mentor and his flowing blade, she gained wings of unparalleled strength."
Oh, I went through a million boluses,
Indeed,
yeah.
we even see the two inspiring equipment on the talisman's engraving.
Cool.
With this knowledge, Malenia's infamous waterfowl dance, a flowing water-based technique, makes more sense. It is obviously a technique of the blind swordsman taught to her. And perhaps he believed by teaching her these warding techniques, she'd helped keep the Scarlet Rot inside of her. But regardless, what is clear is that he helped train the greatest swordsman of an era.
Yeah.
Now that really is one hell of a legacy to be burdened with if you choose the warrior class. So given this history and the words used in the armor set of the warrior class, it's pretty clear that this swordsman had a great effect on the development of this culture, not only in their bladecraft, but the wording of the armor suggests that it also talks about the way they are nomadic. They must always be moving, not only in combat, but in their life. Hence
So basically they were
a
van
nomadic
lifers.
Warrior. And if you look at the curved sword talisman, it looks as though the blind swordsman depicted in this talisman, you do indeed appear to be wearing the same outfit as him, leaving me to speculate that you are of the same tradition or tribe as the blind swordsman. One final speculation and observation of mine is the unusual white hair wig that appears to be popping up as part of the cowl. While it could just be part of padding or insulation, one can't help but see it reflects the hair displayed in the curved sword talisman. Perhaps it is one further homage to the blind swordsman, maybe a way of emulating his hair, because no matter what hairstyle you have as a warrior class, it will look like you have this white cropped hairstyle. But in summary, these warriors are those who have followed the teachings of the blind swordsman, and that is a great character backstory for any role-playing scenario. And now we move on to, I'm sure, what is many people's favourite class, the samurai class. The samurai is interesting from a lore perspective because they owe their lineage to the fascinating land of reeds, and can inform us about the greater world as a whole. Given their class name and armament, we can most likely presume the Land of Reeds to be loosely based on medieval Japan. Now, we learn of this interesting country and its current state from the armor description of the samurai's Land of Reeds armor, which reads, "The Land of Reeds has long been locked in a miserable civil war, during which time it has remained alienated from the cultures of its neighbours. Little wonder that the entire nation has succumbed to the blood-soaked madness, or so it has said."
Well, that's definitely very accurate to Japan, because Japan closed themselves off from the world for a very long time. And being an island nation, they really could, because boats couldn't approach it without being shot at, you know? So this is accurate.
I find this...
And a Sekiro cross... Yes, I still need to play Sekiro. One day.
It's interesting because we already likened this to Japan's medieval period, but there was a specific period in late medieval Japan that was defined by bloody civil conflict, the Sengoku era. For those familiar with Sekiro, you will know that this is also the backdrop to that game. Given From Software's reference to this era before, one cannot help but assume we are meant to think of this period of great internal conflict, and we get a vision of a land completely enveloped by warfare and bloodshed, a land of warriors. Yet it's heavily implied that there's far more fueling this bloody conflict than mere political differences, especially if we consider the term blood-soaked madness that is used to describe this conflict.
Yeah, we're doing Spirit
word
of
choice
the
is
North
interesting
next,
because it gives the impression of conflict that is fueled by bloodthirst and sort of insanity that is gripping the nation as a whole.
Oof.
Indeed, the Reedlander-based appearance default flavor text also states that this region is a place where blood is a common sight. This focus on blood goes beyond being a byproduct of a conflict, especially if you consider the weapons favoured by Reedlanders cause bleed primarily.
Cool.
It becomes even more interesting
Wait, they're so
when
sharp.
you consider the other item that the samurai starts with, the red thorn round shield. Now, of course, this should be readily apparent for not someone that's new to the game, but someone who has played through the game once or twice, as we know there are special red thorns in the game, the Briars of Sin and the Briars of Punishment.
Fun.
Both of these sorceries are linked to what we know to be the Blood Star. For example, the Briars of Sin spell reads the following: an aberrant sorcery discovered by exiled criminals. The guilty, their eyes gouged by thorns, lived in eternal darkness. There they discovered the Blood Star. The Blood Star is therefore a star which exists in a dark void that can only be accessed by those who have lost their sight permanently.
Oh.
This is a subject I have discussed in more details in my Fire Giants video, so I will link that video below if you're interested in a bit more context.
We'll have to watch that, I guess.
But given the bloodthirsty
if it's not too
nature
long.
of the land of Reed's denizens, does the red thorn symbolism take on greater meaning? After all, these are the lands of Okina and his disciples, the white armor-wearing Iniba. Okina is a legendary Reedlander swordsman who wields the Rivers of Blood, a sword that has tasted so much blood that it has become curse. Okina is the prime example of a swordsman who has fallen to this madness and has become a demon that thirsts only for blood. And as such, he would end up serving Moog, Lord of Blood, and his formless mother.
Cool.
Could it even be that the warriors of these lands specifically have weapons that cause bleed on purpose?
Yeah.
Due to their belief in some form of deity or ideal? The potential links between the Blood Star and the Formless Mother are a cause for their own video. However, it does lead us to consider what is the reason for this almost unnatural bloodlust that has taken over an entire nation, and why members of that society bear red thorns upon their shields, and why their weapons always cause bleed. Is this a set of ideals or beliefs that has led to this conflict in the first place? A belief that drives one towards greater bloodshed?
Maybe I'll play around with
Or is it instead just a
bleed.
parasite, feeding off this bloody civil war conflict and exacerbating it through its ideals? That is up to you, but it does give a nice little spin on the usual noble samurai trope that we get in video games. And now we're moving on to the next class, the Astrologer.
Yeah.
An important one in the history of the Lands Between.
Yeah, my
the
favorite.
Astrologers have a fascinating history and impact upon the Lands Between.
Yep.
Their work being directly connected to Glintstone sorcerers and the Carians themselves. We learn of the Astrologers' early history from the Sword of Night and Flame, a legendary sword now possessed by the Carians, and its description reads as follows. Storied sword and treasure of Caria Manor, one of the legendary armaments. Astrologers who preceded the sorcerers established themselves in the mountaintops that nearly touched the sky, and considered the fire giants their neighbours. So we can see that early astrologers lived on the mountaintops of the giants, and lived peacefully alongside these fire giants. It belays a sort of primitive stage of the astrologer community, as of course it would make sense to early researchers, for those without advanced tools, to be as close to their subject as possible, meaning to be as close to the stars as possible. Indeed, we do find traces of this old community up here, as we find astrological tools.
Cool.
It was from these early astrologers that Carians would descend. We know from the Stargazer heirloom that Renala herself was once an astrologer,
Yeah.
and the robes of the preceptors make this connection clearer, as it says the following.
By the way, that outfit looks so cozy. I just honestly would love to wear extra large, like, dress stuff. Like, I know a lot of people are all like, oh, dresses, oh, they're so girly, but they can be so cozy. Like, big, soft, cozy, flowy things. Oh, man. Yeah, absolutely essential. Absolutely. And that's true though, Bridges. I've never been interested in Souls PvP. I don't need to get absolutely fucking murked.
The preceptors make this connection clearer, as it says the following. Glintstone sorcerers are the descendants of astrologers, a fact that the Carians remain aware of, even if their fate has long been severed from the stars. We know that fate has been severed from the stars since Star Scourge Radahn of course halted the movement of the stars. But of course it implies that the early study of astrology by astrologers also went hand in hand with reading fate. Indeed, the flavoured text for the astrologer class, when you're choosing it, reads the following: a scholar who reads fate in the stars, heir to the school of glintstone sorcery. However, it seems for a while at least the Carians carried on the legacy of these astrologers, that being reading the fate in the stars, and it was something that obviously at one point governed the Carians. And we can learn this from the telescope item description, which reads as follows: astrology tool used by members of the Carian royal family, a stolen part of a larger instrument. During the age of the Erd Tree, Carian astrology withered on the vine. The fate once writ in the night skies had been fettered by the Golden Order. Yet despite this, clearly the preceptors carried on the traditions of astrologers. We can see from the preceptor's big hat that the movement of the stars was something important to them. And indeed, Preceptor Celavus's main focus is on abusing fate within the stars to create puppets, so in a way he carries on that legacy. Yet returning to the description of the Preceptor's robe, the schools of glintstone sorcery also owe their genesis to the astrologers, and indeed we know the founding glintstone sorcery was in fact the work of an astrologer, something we learn from the founding Reign of Stars, which reads as follows: the eldest primeval sorcery, said to have been discovered by an ancient astrologer, a sorcery of legendary status.
So cool.
Thought to be the founding glintstone sorcery, the glimpse of the primeval current that the astrologers saw became real, and the star's amber rained down upon this land. Now, if you want to learn more about the primeval current, I did do a video primarily on that. But long story short, primeval current is a metaphysical force that when connected with, one can connect to the abyss from where stars are born. So this astrologer, in his study of the stars, was able to found the school of glintstone sorcery. And therefore everything we have seen about the glintstone sorcerers being descendants of the astrologers makes sense. It is likely upon this founding glintstone sorcery being discovered that the schools and study of glintstone, rather than just the study of the stars, would become quite prevalent. With that in mind, the astrologer armor description makes more sense. It reads as follows: they read fate in the stars, and are said to be the heirs of the glintstone sorcerers. But alas, the night sky no longer cradles fate.
Yeah, because all the stars have been
This covers everything we have said, from the fact they used to once read fate, to the fact they are the ones that established glintstone sorcery. But the fact they are described as the heirs...
Y'all, I just want a bunch of fucking giant crystals. That would be so cool. Expensive, though. Holy shit. But how cool would that be?
Shows that the cycle of sorcery has come full circle. Once the glintstone sorcerers were the heirs of the work of early ancient astrologers, so now are the new astrologers the heirs of the glintstone sorcerers. They are coming into an inheritance that their ancestors once sowed. And now with that said, let us move on to another interesting class.
So wait, I have a question. So glintstone and like the current... So was glintstone something that was brought to the world by magical means? We need a history lesson on glintstone. Or was it something that was already in the lands between and eventually it fell from meteors? Okay. And then I guess people saw that and they're like, oh, okay. We need a full glintstone history video. That's what we need. Do they? I wonder if there are any videos that are based on the history of glintstone, because I would absolutely watch that. That would be so fucking sick.
The Prophet. Now, the Prophet is a class that has great implications for the story as a whole, and is something I covered in my Giants lore video. But regardless, I assume no prior knowledge here, so let us start at the beginning with the Prophet's robes, which read, Robe of exiled prophets who foretold misfortune, and were persecuted and driven from their homes as a result. The shackles around the neck warn passerbys not to lend an ear to their sermons. So these are outcasts, so bound and blindfolded as to mark them as someone heretical, so people do not listen to what they see. Their visions are apparently ones that the Greater Wells Church do not want to be heard. Luckily, we can hear more about the particulars of this vision from the Catch Flame incantation. Interestingly, this is an incantation that the prophet starts with, suggesting that the Catch Flame is born when someone has the vision. The incantation reads as follows. Incantation originating from a sinister prophecy. The flame of ruin is anathema to the Erd Tree, but prophets sometimes glimpse it within the faith all the same. Sadly, when this occurs, their sole reward is banishment.
Oh.
So by choosing this starting class, clearly, we fall within that category.
Yeah.
We are someone who has glimpsed this prophecy and has been blindfolded and exiled as a result. The named prophecy is one actually that sees the Erd Tree burning as a result of the Flame of Ruin.
Oh.
A prophecy expanded upon in the incantation Flame's Deadly Sin, which reads as follows. Incantation originating from a deeply ominous prophecy. The prophet despaired, looking up at the Erd Tree, for soon the kindling would burst into flame, bringing
Melina.
ruin. The burning of the Erd Tree is the first cardinal sin. That is not the domain of mere men.
Or the three
So
fingers.
this is actually a massive bit of lore connected with the starting class. It's one of the most important and final events of the game that your character, the prophet, has already foreseen.
Yeah.
And it's obviously not an uncommon thing to happen, given that it is prophets plural.
I have a question. Is there an ending at all where the tree doesn't get burned? Like, is there an ending that you can choose where you just straight up don't burn the tree? Like some sort of Golden Order ending? No? I feel like there should be. I feel like there should be some sort of ending where you don't burn the tree. I feel like that would be very interesting. No way. Yeah, either Melina does it or you do with the three fingers. Yeah, I wish that there was a choice in that regard. That would have been really cool. But I guess you have to burn the tree so that you can get in and fight the Elden Beast, because you can't just wander on in without flame, I guess. Still, though, how cool would it be to be like, wait, never mind. Yeah, exactly, Sirius, exactly. Oh well, either way. I wonder if there's any videos speculating on what would happen if you don't burn down the tree, though, because that would be that would be a cool video. I would watch that. That would be neat. There's a lot of like what ifs, like what if channels and whatnot. Maybe. I mean, I hope they do a bunch of different DLC for the game. So far, it's taken them a year to announce the first DLC, but we'll see. People are still going to play it. People are obsessed with this. I mean, I'm obsessed with it. It's cool as hell.
And indeed, we can also assume that Corrin suffered a similar fate, though as we see from his robes, he bears this judgment steadfastly, for his robes read the following. Robe of Corrin, the Cleric. Even after exile, Corrin refused to recant his prophecies, and for this, he was blessed with the guidance of grace. Since then, the cartwheel draped on his neck served as a reminder that true guidance await those with iron wills, those with unwavering faith. And so it seems as though Corrin, seeing the burning of the tree...
This is the guy that you get incantations from, right? You trade him, like, books for incantations? I think, like, you give him books and then he's like, oh, here's some new incantations. I'm pretty sure that's who he is, right?
was not one to hold
he
back
moves around
from
a
letting
little
people know this,
in the world.
and he accepted
Yeah,
his
I thought so.
punishment and exile. And it seems as though he comes to the lands between to find answers to this riddle. He is a stalwart believer in the Erd Tree. He does not want to see it burn, but he is afraid that the prophecies are true, and he must act. This is why he seeks Goldmask, but is also why by the end of his journey he has recanted Goldmask, who he sees as a heretic, and he goes mad, finally seeing the Erd Tree burning before his very eyes. something he has seen in prophecy. And that, in essence, is the prophet, someone who has seen the very end of the age of the Erd Tree, and as such has been blinded, outcast, and exiled.
Okay.
Now let us move on to one of the other classes, the hero class. So the quote for the hero from the selection screen of the classes is probably the most interesting flavoured text of all, as it specifically gives you Kin, a Badlands chieftain. Now let us not jump to conclusions, but of course the main Badlands chieftain that will come to mind is Hora Lu. He is actually introduced as Chieftain of the Badlands in the introductory cinematic, so after choosing this class for your first playthrough, you may very well make that connection. In addition, another hero archetype that we meet in game is Nefeli Lu, who is also descended from Hora Lu. Indeed, we know that the hero is at very least an accomplished and respected warrior from the Badlands.
Barbarians.
For their headband reads, "Headband reserved for the Badlands bravest, proof that the wearer has slaughtered countless foes." Following the example of their chieftain, Hora Lu, the brave warriors of the Badlands shun excess adornment.
So where is the Badlands?
And again, it does say that their chieftain is Hora Lu, leading us closer and closer to the conclusion that the hero starting class is Hora Lu's kin.
Also, I just want to say, there's no, there's nothing but blood holding his twisted beard together. That's pretty badass.
Or is at least from his clan. While admittedly there could be other Badlands chiefs out there, come on, who else really could the aforementioned be? There is only one mentioned in-game, and if you do have ties to them as the hero starting class, that is one hell of a legacy to uphold.
Yeah, that
now
is.
Let us move on to one of the more enigmatic classes, the Prisoner class.
This guy's
now,
funny.
The Prisoner starting class is a bit of a mystery, but one that nonetheless gives plenty of interesting roleplay potential. So let us start with their most defining feature, the Iron Mask, and the description of it reads, "Iron mask forced on a prisoner convicted of an appalling crime, thick, heavy, and utterly stifling. A foul creation designed to torment the wearer, either slowly fermenting hatred within their heart, or a spiritual fervour that is near indistinguishable from it."
Man, the helmet looks like it's been like hammered onto the person so they can't take it off. Oh my god, could you imagine having a helmet on that you couldn't take off? Holy fuck that! Oh my god. That's awful. Oh gosh, I hope you feel better, Dwarf. Yeah, I'll be around and whatnot every Tuesday and Wednesday. You're more than welcome to hang out. I hope you feel better, dude. I'll catch you later. And thank you, S1. 60 seconds? That's okay. That's alright. I'll be here for those full 60 seconds. A Berserk reference. And thank you for the 33 months, S1. That's crazy. Thanks. Oh my god, Bridges. Oh my gosh, could you imagine that? Oh god. And only being able to see out of one eye. Oh, that's funny, S1.
Iron Mask
Either way, thanks
is
for taking
part
the time
of
to
their
stop in.
sentence, a device of torture that is meant to have a psychological impact upon the wearer,
Yeah, that
either
would fuck
making
me
them
up
hate
too.
themselves, go mad, or become converted. This type of torture is not actually unique to the prisoner's iron helm.
I'm
The
doing alright.
black dumplings that are forced on the Albinaurics, especially prevalent in
A
Rykar's
black
dungeons,
dumpling.
have a
Yeah,
similar
okay.
effect of driving them insane,
Yeah.
as we can see from their item description, which reads, "Mask forced on a victim's head to lend torture an extra degree of cruelty. It magnifies one's fear and makes them acutely aware of all forms of pain.
Oh god.
When the black dumpling goes on, the torturer no longer seeks answers, only to inflict suffering without hope or relief." So
A
we can
black
even see the
dumpling.
language is pretty similar between
Oh.
these two devices of torture, meaning that it is a psychological torture implement. So this is obviously a cruel type of punishment. And in the
Yeah.
case of the Albinaurics in Rykar's dungeons, we know that is very much unwarranted. But in regards to the iron mask of the prisoner, it does seem to be warranted. The punishment must fit the crime, and the description of the prisoner's mask specifically mentions an appalling crime. What is so interesting is that the description of the prisoner class on the selection screen also gives a little bit of background, saying that the prisoner once lived among the elite. So this is interesting for a number of reasons. Firstly, it shows a kind of fall of grace, someone who once lived among the elite, using their elite position to commit an appalling crime, now being reduced to a iron mask wearing criminal. I also find it interesting because the prisoner class is one who has access to glintstone sorceries, and to me it implies this sort of link between affluence and sorcery, something also implied by Demon Souls with the starting class royalty, another upper class that has access to these spells. And given the isolationist culture and kind of upper class intellectual culture of Raya Lucaria, it does make sense that those with means and resource would be those most likely to have access to this school. And I think it just gives us a nice little cultural commentary on a class system within Elden Ring. However, it could also just be implying some links to the Carian royalty, but that would honestly just be wild speculation.
Yeah,
but nonetheless,
I
can't deny it is a logical one given the connections to hierarchy and sorcery.
Yeah,
However,
that's cool
the
as hell,
ties
though.
to nobility are interesting for another reason, because I see it tying up with two outside sources, the so-called Man in the Iron Mask and Griffith from the manga Berserk. The man...
I've really got to read Berserk. We were talking about comics and stuff earlier today. I should get the first volume of Berserk, at least. It reminds me a lot of my art style, too. I've had a lot of people compare my art to Berserk. And I had, when I started drawing that kind of style, I was like 13, 14 or so before I even knew what Berserk was. So it's kind of cool. It's like Convergent Evolution. I know I've been saying it for years, but next year I'm actually going to have a little bit more time for myself. So maybe I'll be able to actually read from time to time. But I really should read Berserk. I think I would really appreciate it. From what I've learned, everything about it just encompasses a lot of what I really like about creation and art. Either way, back to the video.
And in the Iron Mask was apparently a prisoner in the country of France, imprisoned for 30 plus years during Louis the Great's reign in the late 17th century.
So fancy.
Witnesses testified to the fact they had encountered a prisoner in the jails who had his face completely occluded by an iron mask. Years since, historians have speculated that this man was a relation of the king himself, imprisoned for political reasons, and his face was hidden so that he would fade into obscurity. Ultimately, we do not know the truth of it, but this is one of the main current theories. So I think the ties to nobility is something that could very much harken back to the Man in the Iron Mask, though I think Boggart's mask, another iron mask forced on prisoners, is more akin to the descriptions we see of the Man in the Iron Mask.
He just wanted to eat his
but
prawns.
One can't help but remember the fact the prisoner is reputedly of noble origin, and having the Iron Mask seems to rob him of his identity.
Yeah.
Griffith's mask is one that is forced upon him during the story of Berserk. While Griffith is not a noble by birth, he does eventually become a Viscount, so the connection is still there. And when it comes to aesthetic qualities, it's hard to deny that Griffith's mask is more similar than the prior example I just gave. Ultimately, Griffith's initial crime isn't huge. He is accused of seducing a king's daughter. So this might not be the appalling crime committed by the prisoner as described by their flavoured text. However, it could just be a jumped up crime, and they have been imprisoned for political reasons, both like Griffith and like the Man in the Iron Mask. However, there is also one other thing of Griffith's story that is interesting in regards to the prisoner class. One can't help remember the rift that Griffith enters to converse with demons under the eclipse after he has been freed from his incarceration by Guts. Then you cannot help but notice the rift shield that the prisoner holds, the description of which reads, "Small metal round shield depicting a sinister rift."
Yeah.
An antiquated charm that glares back at an enemy. And indeed we can see the rift depicted on the front of the shield, yet there's no other mention at any other point in the game of a rift. Is it a possible hint as to the crime that the prisoner committed? Ultimately, I guess it is up to us to decide what the appalling crime of the prisoner is.
Yeah.
And to me, the prisoner class
DLC?
is one of the most interesting and mysterious backstories
DLC?
for that very reason. And now, unfortunately, not all starting classes are equal, and we get to the ranks
wretch?
of the litter. So the Vagabond, the Bandit, and the Wretch are unfortunately the weakest in my opinion when it comes to backstory, and also happen to be my least favourite classes to choose, probably for the lack of surrounding lore. However, this might be better for some people because they have blank canvases for people to make their own stories. This is just my opinion, of course. The Bandit is simply just a bandit, as we learn from their outfit and
just some
equipment,
guy. Just
and
some dude.
more like a generic soul starting class from Dark Souls, with very little lore associated to be mined from their starting gear. This is similar to the Wretch, although what are you really expecting from a Wretch? This is the ultimate blank canvas. The Vagabond class does appear to have the most interesting lore out of this remaining trio, however. According to the Vagabond set, they are in essence a knight of a once probably noble house that has been forced to leave for whatever reason, as the armour set reads the following. Chess piece of a knight banished from their motherland, dirty and battered after enduring a lengthy vagabond journey. The crest emblazoned on the front is worn and dingy, no longer able to evoke sentiment. So this is the most interesting out of these three because it is a blank canvas, but one has a solid canvas. They have a motherland, so you can choose one of the other lands that are mentioned in-game, or make up your own. They also once had a crest of some kind that has been worn off, meaning you have the ability to say it's whatever crest you wanted it to be. It could have been Rykard's, it could have been Radahn's, it could have been another noble house from out with the lands between. So in that respect, it is pretty good from a roleplay perspective. They are very similar to the Banished Knights, knights who came from a solid background of training and discipline, but are now essentially free agents and can do what they want. There's also the fact they are vagabonds, and they've endured a long, lengthy journey, so in your mind you can make up what adventures they went on, and what journey they've made to come to this point, and so from that perspective it is far more interesting than the Bandit and Wretch class. But ultimately they are still a blank canvas, and there just isn't much surrounding lore that tells us more about the lands between, or the Tarnished themselves. And that's really all I've got to say about the final three classes. If you think I'm missing anything, I would love to hear more about these guys, to get more of a kind of backstory, but I don't think there is anything else. And so there you have it, guys, a bit of a deep dive into the starting classes.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Because I started thinking about this during my last couple of videos, and I think From Software did a far better job of actually fleshing out these classes.
Yeah, they did.
And I think it's something that can be forgotten, especially people that only play one playthrough. But there's actually a lot of lore to be had right at the beginning of the game, if you just made every single class and read through all their item descriptions. So I felt this was a worthwhile video to make, as it's something that not a lot of people will have considered, and it gives us a nice foundation for the rest of the lore going forward. What I like most about it is that if you look at the classes to this degree, it gives a great wide view of the world of Elden Ring, the society, crime and punishment, different nations, religious practices and beliefs, and ultimately the horrifying acts that the people of this world inflict upon each other. It is an important kernel of lore, and I'm really happy that you joined me today. If you like this video, guys, please give it a like and consider subscribing for more Elden Ring lore. If you want to help the channel out in different ways, I do have a Patreon and channel memberships. But until next time, guys, just leave me a comment below on what next subject you want me to cover. I'll be going back to my long form content next. But until then, I will see you at the round table hold. Take care, and have a nice day.
Yeah, I know. I thought that was a great video. That was a really excellent breakdown, and it definitely gives me a lot more to think about when I do a New Game Plus. I mean, I might do a warrior. I definitely enjoyed my astrologer playthrough, even, like, I feel like my favorite out of all these is most definitely the astrologer. I absolutely love everything to do with, like, Raya Lucaria, everything to do with the sorceries, the magic, everything in the world. I think it's very fascinating, probably my favorite part. But since I want to try to go for a melee build, I think I might try and go for the warrior. I'm not 100% sure though, because this is supposed to be like a wielding 2 blades. I'm not used to that kind of, and maybe that's why I should do warrior. Because I did Dark Souls 3 with sword and a shield, and I did Elden Ring as an astrologer. Heroes, yeah, I don't know. That's so small. So much information in such a small amount of time. I guess it's just very blatantly put out there. Meanwhile, the rest of these, it requires a little bit more speculation. And a lot more information, I guess. Broader information. But, maybe... Yeah, that's true. I'm not trying to min-max. That is very, very true. I would probably try and go for the warrior then, I guess. Although samurai could also be very interesting. But I'm leaning towards warrior. Also, I feel like the whole flowy water, cool armor, keep the rod at bay type thing seems like a very interesting way to approach a story now that I know a lot more about it. Especially if I'm gonna try and oh man, I don't know. It's I'm leaning more towards warrior for if I do another playthrough. I want to at some point. I would really like to experience Elden Ring while also knowing what's going on in the world, because I was literally just running all over the place, not knowing where I was, what I was doing. I had absolutely no idea, and now I know, kind of, for the most part. More than I did before, that's for sure. So maybe I'll go with warrior. I'm gonna miss astrologer. God. Rocksling and glintstone pebble. They got an awful lot of use in my playthrough. Oh, that's cool as hell though. Yeah, I would definitely try a dex build. As a stealth build. Kind of like in Skyrim, you know, the sneaky archer. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I think that would be very interesting, though. Yeah, we'll take a look at it. We'll take a look at it. It would be cool if I could incorporate bleed as well. That would be really cool. We'll see when we get there. I'm probably going to play Bloodborne before I go back to Elden Ring, though. Especially for, like, another playthrough. I might, like, go back and try and do a little bit in my current game and then beat the Elden Beast before I do Bloodborne. Probably, maybe. We'll see. We'll see how many gaps I have in between the big games coming out this year. But, I am probably going to try and play and beat Bloodborne before I do another playthrough of Elden Ring. Dex, spell, sword, seeing as you already get to... Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I don't know. Not even bows, just night sorcery that people don't respond to. Yeah. Yeah, that would be really cool. That'd be very in-depth. Well, there was another... There's, like, Saint Trina's, like, sleep mechanic and stuff? Like, what? I didn't even know that was a mechanic in the game until I saw a video talking about it. Night sorcery and is Elden Ring on easy mode. You know what's really easy mode in Elden Ring? Gravity magic. Rock smash. Or no, sorry, rock sling. Rock sling. Rock sling. Rock sling. Rock sling. With the meteorite staff? God, I took down so much so quick with rock sling. Holy shit. Rock sling. Like, I remember when I ran into, like, the glintstone dragon in, like, the watery field, when I had to get the key to get into the academy. And the first time that I fought it, I pretty much just had glintstone pebble. And I literally could not do enough damage to kill it before I ran out of mana. And yeah, as soon as I got rock sling, that changed the game for me. Holy shit. A Night Comet. Yeah, that sounds insane. I got really attached. I didn't like using spells that required way too much mana because... What? What? Because if I miss, that's an awful lot gone. Come here, little guy. Bang. You wanna come up here? What are you begging for? It's not dinner time yet. Every day.